Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 5th of October, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can find out more about your Alaska weather anytime by calling 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. Or find us online at weather.gov/Alaska. Marine VHF and your NOAA Weather Radio are always good sources of information as well. Anytime you can't find something you need or something you don't like about this show, you have some suggestions or comments and ways to improve it, we'd love to hear what you think. David.Snider@noaa.gov is an easy way to find me on email, and I'll reply as quickly as I can. Here's a look at our current situation across Alaska tonight. No other warnings except for what we see in southwestern Alaska for the Kuskokwim Delta and into Bristol Bay. For coastal flooding. This is a coastal flooding advisory, and we have seen some coastal flooding in the area around Quinnipiac. More on that in just a minute. This advisory, though, for those southwest-facing coastlines especially, we'll see impacts probably until about 9 o'clock tonight before conditions begin to improve. So a coastal flood advisory continues for the early evening hours. Now, there are some areas of strong winds in the southeast as gales are continuing out in the Gulf and across the outer coast. Strong winds are expected around Skagway, Sitka, and in Heidelberg. But no warnings, watches, or advisories out for your area right now, so expect to have a little bit of a breeze for a while. Here's the situation out in Quinnipiac, and as we understand it now, the road in the region there is flooded. Some of the sandbags and the tundra berms that have been developed in the area, especially around the archaeological dig site, has been flooded there. This is Water Plant Road, and pictures from the area out there have been sent in to us, so we appreciate those reports. And we understand that this could have a major impact on your community. If your community has flooding, however minor or however major, please do let us know. Let your local officials know and ask them to relay that to the National Weather Service. Whether you're in Fairbanks or work with the Fairbanks office, the Anchorage office, or in Juneau, your reports make a big difference in how we do our job and how we can help predict the weather that may affect your community, especially along the coast. So please do relay those reports as soon as you get them and as soon as you can. As we look out across the Gulf and into southeast now, what's ahead of the next wave of weather that's building are gales. And you can see the brighter colors here. If you look at the sea height scale, that takes us to about 25, 26 feet here out across the central Gulf. Seas are going to build tonight and into tomorrow with winds coming in generally from the west and northwest about 45 knots. You can see that we don't have a whole lot of impacts here across the inner channels just yet, but we do expect to see some areas picking up to gale strength, at least for a little while this evening before conditions start to improve. We'll take a look at that as we look at your marine forecast here coming up toward the end of the show. In the meantime, on the backside of the storm, just a little bit of a break in the weather today. The FAA aviation weather cameras gave us a little hint of sunshine earlier today around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. This was looking north and west, and for a moment anyway, at least for a moment, it looked like a pretty nice day there around Dutch Harbor. So hopefully your day in your part of Alaska was acceptable and you had a good one. Here's a look at the satellite picture, and you can see a beautiful thing from outer space looking down on Alaska. This spiral structure of cloud cover is that very deep low pressure system that was probably bringing some not so pretty weather to areas around southwestern Alaska earlier today. It's pulled in a lot of dry air across the central and western Gulf and is pushing a disturbance closer to southeast. This will swing through here fairly quickly later tonight and tomorrow and then re-energize another wave of low pressure and develop that across northern parts of the Gulf as we head into tonight and tomorrow. So this is just one wave, and the next wave is coming in behind it. The other thing to note here are the streaks of clouds that are more or less in a straight line. That's almost directly under the jet stream that's moving around 150 to 180 knots. And that is a powerful part of the storm system that is spinning this area of low pressure like a top, just as if you had a top in your hand and you kind of put your hand along the side of it. It's giving it a little bit of an extra boost, and so that has really energized that system as it's moved across the Bering Sea. Now as it's moving over land, conditions will start to ease a little bit, but it still has some work to do in starting up a new wave of low pressure across the northern Gulf. In the meantime, moisture is moving northward. We've seen some light rainfall moving into the central and eastern interior. The rainfall and moisture moving up in elevation has also turned into snow across the Parks Highway up around Cantwell. Apparently some light reports of snow in the region there. Nothing that's sticking just yet. And there will be more areas of snow across the Arctic coast. Areas of fog there wrapping all into this wide area of cartwheeling weather that's moving from west to east. Here's the surface weather map now, and low pressure earlier today down to 970 millibars as the central area of low pressure was moving into the YK Delta. It did look like coastal flooding possibilities would continue at least into the early evening hours there as those winds were pushing in from the west into the coastline from Bristol Bay all the way up toward the Kuskokwim Delta. Weak boundary here across the north, separating some different changes in temperature across the north. That was helping to build some clouds and some showers generally on the south side. This will be moving northward though, so spreading more rainfall into the interior as we go. And of course, we're looking at the northern Gulf and southeast with showers and wind moving through today, a fairly blustery day in some parts, another break, and then another surge of rainfall coming in behind that. Heading into tonight, the front will move through southeastern Alaska in higher terrain areas of the Alaska Range and toward the St. Wrangell Alliance region. Watch for some areas of rain and snow showers there, but again, all that's going to be fairly high terrain type changes there. Most areas in the Kenai Peninsula, southwest, Norton Sound up toward the Seward Peninsula will be dealing with all liquid precipitation. If you're traveling north on the Parks Highway or southbound for that matter, you may run into periods of mixed precipitation. By and large, though, it does look like rain. And light snow and mixed precipitation for the Beaufort and Chukchi seacoasts. Out across the west in the Aleutians, watch for some breaks in the clouds for the central and eastern chain to the Alaska Peninsula, but there will be some stiff winds there working across the peninsula. And for southeast, we're dealing with rain and wind with that westerly surge working across the Gulf. Things should start to improve as we head into Friday. If you're in the Panhandle, you'll still see some breezy conditions throughout the day, but no wind warnings just yet. A 993 millibar low will be just to the west of Yakutat and east of Cordova. Showers will continue in the region, and sometimes it may be a heavy shower, perhaps even steadier rainfall for a time. Watch for light rainfall across the Kenai Peninsula, and on the northern side of the Alaska Range, don't be surprised to see fog, especially IFR in some cases in the morning. Showers continue across southwest, and you'll notice that tight pressure gradient here indicated by the black lines pushing so close together will probably create areas of wind throughout the rest of the day as Mother Nature tries to equalize the pressure imbalance from the low here to high pressure well to the south and to the north. Another disturbance is building out across the western Bering Sea, but keep in mind that ridge of high pressure is right in between, and so as this moves eastward on Saturday, it will start to lose some strength, and that pressure reading number here, 1,012 millibars, will continue to go up as it weakens, a sign that things won't be so bad with this circulation. But the one to the south will be one to keep an eye on again, as it's a lot closer to that faster moving jet stream, and we'll see what it does as it moves into the northern Gulf. By Saturday afternoon, 1,000 millibars there, with warmer air pushing northward once again toward Bristol Bay and over Kodiak Island, and colder, drier air coming in behind that. A ridge of high pressure sitting over the Gulf, so conditions will clear up just a little bit for a time, but the wind doesn't really quit out across the open waters there. So we'll see a brief break, at least in the sky cover, before the next wave of weather moves in from the west. For South Central, some breaks in the clouds, a mostly cloudy start to the weekend around Cook Inlet, and maybe some clearer conditions across parts of the Copper River Basin. And for Southeast, that big wave of wind and rain should be pushing even further east and southward. The wind conditions should start to improve, and showers will gradually tail off to the south as you go throughout your Saturday afternoon there. Rain and snow showers are possible in the interior. It looks like mainly clouds and wet weather around Fairbanks, but areas to the north in the higher terrain and out west toward the northern end of Norton Sound and the interior of the Seward Peninsula could be looking at some areas of rain and snow. And light snow and areas of low ceilings and fog certainly possible up across the north coast and the interior there of the coastal plain. Watch for low pressure to linger just north and east of Kaktovik there as conditions continue to cool down and grease ice continues to form across some of the barrier islands, especially east of Point Barrow all the way out toward Kaktovik. Look out to the west around St. Paul. Rain and wind continue to flow around your area. And for the central and western chain, watch for showers to continue for Adak and Atka, as well as Kiska and Attu. Pretty much normal October weather for you. Let's take a look at temperatures as we move into tomorrow morning then. We've got several waves of weather that could change things up and cool things down as you would expect after they pass. For southeast, you're still in the mid-40s in the morning, 30s and 40s for south central, all the way down toward Kodiak Island at 47, the middle Tanana Valley out toward Delta Junction, and north and west toward Tanana in the mid-30s, still holding at or just above the freezing mark. 35 around Eagle, the AKwx Pass about 28, and low 30s, close to freezing if not just below it around Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, and Barrow 33. Nome, you're looking at 38, lower to mid-40s for south and west, and mild conditions continue for the Alaska Peninsula all the way out through the Aleutian Chain. By the afternoon, look for high temps just below the 50-degree mark for many around the Susitna Valley, out toward the Matanuska Valley, and southward toward Kenai. Looks like Homer about 52, 53 in Kodiak. Southeast, expect highs on Friday in the lower 50s. The middle Tanana Valley back in the mid to upper 40s. Fort Yukon 46, 33 in Barrow, 38 in Shishmaref, a little bit milder in Nome at 42. And Bristol Bay temperatures will be some of the warmest in the lower to mid-50s there, 48 around St. Paul and St. George, and 50 degrees or so around the Alaska Peninsula out toward Dutch Harbor and Unalaska. By Saturday morning, low temperatures are cooling off a little bit in southeast, lower 40s for you. We'll see temps drop into the upper 30s for many across south central, 42 in Kodiak, mid-30s for the middle Tanana Valley, again 36 in Fairbanks, 33 in Fort Yukon. Further north, temperatures are dropping into the 20s, upper 20s to about 30 degrees for the Arctic coast, but AKwx Pass and Arctic Village are in the lower 20s for your Saturday morning. For the west, looks like temps are cooling off into the mid-30s there with Dutch Harbor and Unalaska at 44. By Saturday, well, it's starting to look a little bit more like fall here. Temperatures are cooling into the lower 30s for daytime highs for Barrow, all the way out to Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, 33 in Kaktovik, upper 40s and lower 50s for southeast. For south central, just holding on to the last grasps of early fall, about 50 degrees there, 51 in Homer and Seward, upper 40s around Bristol Bay, and cooler weather setting into Nome at 40 degrees.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather across the state is going to look very similar on Friday with MVFR and IFR conditions widespread across the southern tier of the state and into the Bering. Look for also IFR conditions across the north coast, as well as MVFR spread down just south of the Brooks Range here. And then for south central locations, we'll see a couple locations in IFR. Southeast, we'll see a few locations in the MFR category during the morning hours, with a wider spread MVFR category across the eastern Gulf waters in the afternoon. Low pressure will be moving, so that MVFR is going to be widespread there. Across the southern tier of the state, we're going to see widespread MVFR conditions during the Friday afternoon time period, as well as the north coast and northwest. Across the Bering, look for IFR conditions along and north of Nunavak Island there, and we'll see widespread MVFR conditions across the Bering and the Aleutian Chain, including the Alaska Peninsula. On your Saturday, expect conditions to be widespread MVFR to start the day. We'll see IFR conditions all along the west coast, just pockets there, and along the Alaska Peninsula and across the north coast. Look for possible IFR conditions along a low pressure system that's going to have a little boundary there just south of the Brooks Range. And we'll see IFR conditions for your Saturday morning across the southeast, as well as the MVFR extending into the Gulf waters. Look for conditions improving, however, for the southeast during the afternoon. We'll see improving conditions except for a small area out there in the Gulf. Across the state, widespread MVFR conditions as low pressure remains the dominant feature. And across the west coast, those MVFR conditions are going to continue down through the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Chain, with IFR conditions along the Alaska Peninsula. Now, let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We'll see Anaktuvik Pass go from MVFR to IFR late day, and Adigan will also go MVFR to IFR. We'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass go from IFR improving to MVFR, and we'll see Rainy stay MVFR all day. Windy will be MVFR, and we'll see Isabel at MVFR. On Friday, Mentasta will stay MVFR all day, and Tanita will go IFR to MVFR. Portage will go MVFR to VFR, and Chilkoot and White Pass will be MVFR for most of the day. Now we'll take a look at your freezing levels. Starting here up at the top, the surface freezing level is going to be draped along the Brooks Range, with the freezing levels off the surface slowly increasing from 2,000 to 4,000 feet as you head towards the southern portion of the state into the northern Gulf there. The 6,000 to 8,000 feet climbs just south of the Gulf, but we do have a 4,000 to 6,000 climb across the Aleutian chain. Now let's take a look at your icing conditions. The concerns are going to be across the west coast with conditions between 6,000 to 8,000 feet there along the coast, and we'll see moderate conditions just along the coast there and down through Bristol Bay. We'll see conditions also for ice along the southeast and along the Alaska Range are going to be a concern above 8,000 feet, a little bit warmer to the south, and above 6,000 feet as you head across the eastern Brooks Range and the north coast. Let's take a look at your jet stream for tomorrow. We have a slightly amplified pattern across the Bering with troughing over the eastern areas of the Gulf. 140 to 150 knot jet stream across the area, so this is quite a strong jet at this point. We'll see on the backside a low pressure system that moves off to the east. We're going to have a strong northwesterly flow between 40 to 50 knots across the Alaska Peninsula down through Kodiak. Strongest winds there at 9,000 feet, 20 to 30 knots across the eastern areas of the Gulf inland. Across the northern tier of the state, a little bit lighter winds there at 10 knots out of the west to northwest with a slight change of flow across the Bering between 20 to 50 knots, stronger there in the eastern Bering waters, around 50 knots through the Alaska Peninsula. Very stacked system will bring those strong winds down to 3,000 feet as well, 25 to 60 knots as you cross into the Gulf of Alaska, seeing those strongest jet speeds at 50 to 60 knots. That low-level jet is going to be pushing into the southeast at 50 knots out of the west. Mainly the state will see 15 to 25 knots with a north to northwesterly flow there and out towards the west a zonal westerly flow. Let's take and sum all this turbulence up. The problem areas are going to be along the north coast, mainly across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, and also across the southeast below 4,000 to 6,000 feet.
Venus and Mars line up again.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We always hear about the planets aligning, but we have something really special happening this week that we get to share with the red planet Mars.
That's right, James. Mars, Venus, and Earth will be in just the right position that we'll get to see a Mars-Venus scoochie. And if you were on Mars, you would see a Venus-Earth scoochie.
What are we talking about? Let's show you. As many of you know, the planets orbit the Sun in concentric ellipses, Mercury being the closest planet to the Sun, then Venus, then Earth, and then Mars.
As we travel around the Sun, we're all traveling at different speeds. The astronomer Johannes Kepler noticed that planets closer to the Sun travel faster than those further away. It takes Mercury only 88 Earth days to orbit the Sun, and Venus takes a little over 7.5 months to orbit the Sun.
Earth takes approximately 365 days, or 1 year, to orbit the Sun. Meanwhile, Mars takes almost 2 years to orbit the Sun. When we view the solar system from above, the planets look like runners on a racetrack, with each planet in a different lane. Venus and Mars are the two planets that can come closest to the Earth, and they have a lot in common.
They're both round, rocky objects that circle relatively close to the Sun.
Relatively, at least compared to the outer planets Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. But when you look closer at them, they present some startling differences.
For instance, Mars might be a good place to personally visit someday, while Venus, well, you die pretty much instantly on the surface.
Don't remind me.
All this week, Venus, Earth, and Mars will be arranged in such a way that we on Earth will see a conjunction between Venus and Mars. Basically, Venus and Mars will be next to each other in the sky just before sunrise.
However, if you were an observer on Mars, you would see Venus and Earth next to each other in the sky just after sunset.
Hey James, let's view the sky from Earth, then take our viewers to Mars, and then view the same conjunction from there.
Sounds like a great idea, Dehne. Let's go.
Okay, we have our skies set up for October 2nd, just before sunrise facing east. There you'll see two bright non-twinkling lights. The brighter of the two is our sister planet Venus, named after the Roman goddess of beauty and love.
The dimmer and redder of the two is the red planet Mars, named after the Roman god of war. Early in the week, Venus can be up and to the right of Mars. However, as the week passes, you'll see Venus getting closer and closer to Mars.
Then, on October 5th, Mars and Venus reach their closest appearance to each other in the sky. And this is the day when Martians will be able to see an equally close conjunction of Venus and Earth.
Since there are no Martians and no humans on Mars yet, we have to use our imagination.
So, get your skyboards ready as we take a trip to Mars and check out the same conjunction from a Martian's perspective.
Okay, we've got our skies set up for just after sunset near Gale Crater on Mars. Specifically, we're at about 4.5 degrees south of the Martian equator and about 137 degrees east longitude. We also have our time set to just after the Martian sunset at 1838 Universal Time. That's 2:38 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
That's just in time for Martian dinner. And if we aimed our telescope to the northwest, low on the horizon, we would see our home planet Earth snuggling up with our sister planet Venus.
And if you had a really high-powered lens on your telescope, you'd see a gibbous Earth with a tiny gibbous pinpoint of light next to it. That's none other than our moon. Now, how neat is that?
Such wonderful things to see on our world and throughout the solar system. You just have to remember to keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back with the check of your sea ice edge now. We are seeing some grease ice form along the barrier islands across the Beaufort seacoast, generally west of Prudhoe Bay and east of Barrow. There's also a hint of some ice, some new ice around the Kaktovik area, but the main ice pack is still well to the north and east, about 150 nautical miles north and east of Kaktovik. For the very latest information, anytime, head to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice, and you can check on the sea ice edge mapping and outlooks for the rest of the season. On to southeast now. Inside passage winds are going to be a little bit stronger in the next couple days. Southerlies 15 to 25 with some higher seas around the Lynn Canal and the Clarence Strait, up to 6-foot seas there. Gales offshore and all the way out into the offshore areas. Looks for gales with some gusts as well, up to 45 knots there south of Sitka all the way out toward Heidelberg, and probably some strong winds around the Skagway area. Overnight conditions in all these regions should see some improvement, but another push of wind is coming your way. Outer coast winds 20 to 30, even 35 as you head southward toward the Dixon entrance. And as you get into Saturday, look for the winds to shift to more of a northwesterly direction. Remember, the hotter the colors here, the higher the seas, and you can see that ramping up here in the scale. We'll have seas south of Cross Sound and Stevens Passage all the way into Sitka and Clarence Strait from about 18 to 22 feet. On the inside, 2-foot seas across the central and northern sections of the Panhandle's inner passages. The Clarence Strait wind still holding its from the west 15 knots with a 7-foot sea. As we look at south central, the gales again are moving away from the region, but we're still going to have some stronger winds cutting through the Barren Islands and across areas outside of Resurrection Bay and outside of Prince William Sound. Inside the Sound, 10 knots with a north flow, 2-foot sea there. Northwesterlies in the northern Cook Inlet. And then south of Clam Gulch, the winds really come up from the west, 30 to 40 knots. By Saturday, some improvement again. You can see the higher seas moving to the south and east. Northwesterlies across Prince William Sound, 10 knots on the inside, 20 knots on the outside, and 20 to 30 knots as you head south from Kenai there, with 4 to 9-foot seas west of the Barrens and 12-foot seas to the east, 11-foot seas outside of Resurrection Bay and Prince William Sound, still with a 20-knot wind. Across Bristol Bay, 40-knot winds there with 18-foot seas. Westerlies all the way down from Chignik to Cold Bay, and also across from AKwx all the way southward toward Sandpoint, 35 to 40 knots, 15 to 20-foot seas there, and much higher winds across Kodiak Island. Still looking at 40 to 45 knot winds 11 to 20-foot seas on either side of Kodiak Island, with some improvement on Saturday. You can see the winds becoming more southerly there. Westerlies at 20 knots inside of Shelikof Strait with a 5-foot sea, 10-foot seas on the eastern side of Kodiak Island. Northerlies are still blowing across Bristol Bay, 20 knots with a 6-foot sea, and easterlies down the Bering Sea coast, 30 knots with a 9-foot sea there for areas around Sand Point, southeasterlies with a 15-foot sea as you head into Saturday. For the Aleutians, 25-knot winds on either side of Unalaska, 14-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, 10-foot seas for the Pacific, and then 10 to 15-knot winds for most areas out of the southwest. Winds will be just a little stronger west of Kiska with a 10-foot sea on Friday. For Saturday, westerlies pick up a little bit more. 20-foot seas there blowing across the Bering Sea coast, 25-knot winds blowing into Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, 9-foot seas expected there, and west and northwesterlies for the central and eastern chain, 20 to 30, and seas up to 12 to even 17 feet on Saturday. For the west coast, northerlies coming down the outer coastline there, you're looking at 15 to 30 knots, 9 to 17-foot seas around the Kuskokwim Delta and into Bristol Bay. You're still seeing those higher seas in the region, so plan on that. And with the onshore flow again, there could still be some isolated areas of additional water being pushed closer to shore more than normal. 25 to 30 knots from St. Matthew to the Pribilofs, 13-foot seas in the Bering. That becomes 4 to 8-foot seas as we go through the rest of your Saturday. Offshore flow develops there, easterly and southeasterly winds, so some improvement along coastal areas for sure. Light northerly winds inside of Norton Sound, 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. And across the northern coast, west and northwesterlies moving through the Beaufort Sea, 20 to 25, 5 to 7-foot seas. They're blowing into Barrow, Point Lay, and close to Point Hope. A northerly flow, 25 knots with 7-foot seas there for Friday. Winds diminish as we head into Saturday, with northwesterlies still holding strong across the Beaufort Sea coast, 25 to 30 knots there, and an 8 to 9-foot sea as we start up the weekend. A quick recap of the weather situation in Alaska. High wind warnings have been dropped for the Pribilofs, but a coastal flood advisory still continues for the Kuskokwim Delta as well as Bristol Bay. That'll go until 9 o'clock tonight. Watch for strong winds there and some gusty winds across southeast with a wave of rain working through. Conditions will continue to focus on southeast in the coming days with periods of rain and snow across the north and rain and areas of fog around the Alaska Range. A new weather system moving in through the southern Bering Sea. By Saturday, 1,000 millibars and stronger winds once again moving through the Alaska Peninsula with rain showers slowing down for parts of southeast. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. We'll see you right here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.